Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, race to succeed Van Hollen gets contentious. How bad is Metro, and is a federal takeover the solution? Would Maryland's gun laws have prevented the shootings in Oregon? Stay tuned. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by the former executive director of the Maryland Democratic Party, business strategist Rich Parsons, former Republican candidate for delegate Uncapher, and political strategist Susan Heltemes. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. The election contest to succeed Chris Van Hollen in the 8th Congressional District is proving almost as interesting as the Republican presidential race. The 6 Democratic candidates and 1 independent candidate jostled for position in the first candidate forum sponsored by the Sierra Club held in Silver Spring this week. While most of the candidates spent their time introducing themselves and providing their bona fides to run for office, the forum turned interesting when the candidates began to launch political barbs at one another. Susan, even though there are 3 members of the Maryland General Assembly running, a former low-level White House official, a professor of government, a high-profile television personality, and a self-described activist and entrepreneur, politically, there isn't a lot of diversity in this assembly of candidates. They're all left of center, committed to climate change, and saving the planet. So who stands out in this race?
Well, I think, first of all, I would object to the fact that it was that divisive. I was there. I think the most interesting point came when Liz Matory came into the room. She hadn't been invited. She is running as an independent, and that created a little friction, and she did join the discussion about halfway through. But I think that I think there are 3 viable candidates. Kathleen Matthews, because of the profile and the money she's raising. And then there's Jamie Raskin, who is a professor at AU, a state senator who defeated Ida Rubin when he wasn't supposed to. And the third is Kumar Barve. Some people say that Kumar's not in the mix, but he's been around a long time and he has a lot of support out there. So those are the 3. Everyone else has been.
But let me get this straight, Susan. It's not divisive to call Kathleen Matthews a rich white woman who's not eligible to run
she was called
because
rich,
of that?
She was called a rich white woman. It wasn't said that she wasn't able to. The context was that she doesn't represent what District 8 is.
Okay, so that's not divisive enough, huh?
No, I didn't think it was that bad. After listening to the Republican presidential debates, this was pablum.
Okay, Rich, what do you make of the candidates in this race, and why did the candidates go on the attack so quickly?
Well, there's not a lot of ideological difference. I mean, these are all kind of left or center-left Democrats, and I think they're going to try to differentiate themselves based on their experience and slight nuances of policy. So that's kind of a situation ripe for trying to draw whatever distinctions you can.
But Barve and Jamie Raskin exchanged questions about certain endorsement that each one had given.
Yeah, that's all small ball stuff. I think if you look at Kumar Barve, I think Susan's right. I think he will be in this mix because I think he's got a little bit more. What did he say in the debate? He calls himself a practical liberal or a liberal with practical instincts or something. He's got a little bit more of a centrist tilt towards him. And this district, the way it's drawn now, is actually pretty good for a moderate to win. It's not as far left as some of the other districts in the state. It does have Republicans in it. It does have independent voters. Yes, it's got a Democratic majority, but I think it's going to be a very interesting race to watch. I think Susan hit kind of the top 3 candidates that I would keep my eye on, and I think we're going to have some good choices there.
What's the appeal of Kathleen Matthews?
Well, I think if you've ever met her, she's very intelligent, and obviously she's, I think, going to run a strong race in terms of the financial backing she's already put together. I think, we're just beginning to see the strengths and weaknesses of these candidates. I've known the 2 legislators for a very long time, and they're both, I think, well thought of in Annapolis.
Casey, we talk about Kathleen Matthews, and first of all, she has name recognition. She was on WJLA a long, long time. And then there are those who watch Chris Matthews, and the name is familiar. But she worked at Marriott for a very long time. And when she makes her case that what she did at Marriott, she traveled to 50 countries. She was instrumental in getting hotels built in Rwanda and Haiti.
And actually having a business person with some business experience is a kind of a rare thing here in Montgomery County, and it's not necessarily bad.
For you activists, she hasn't toiled in the vineyard.
But look at John Delaney. Same difference. And what's interesting about
And he's doing a great job.
Yes, and with Kathleen Matthews, I'm not saying she's going to win, but she is a female. People like to vote for a female.
She's the Eisenhower of the race. Either side would have been happy to get her because no one really knows what she thinks about anything.
And what I was at Marriott today and talking to a high-level official there, and we got onto a conversation about Kathleen, and he used the word that she was transformational at Marriott. She came in as a Democrat in an organization run by Republican and men on the whole, and she came in and made a lot of changes. She got the company to go towards green. Their building is a
Susan,
green building.
Marriott is the leading hotel hospitality company in the world. They're on the cutting edge. They know what their customers like. Don't just say that she's the only one.
No.
I got to go to Robin because Robin, I don't want to ignore you, but let's face it. They're all Democrats and one uninvited independent. Where are the Republicans in this race? What I've been told by the former chairman of the Montgomery County Central Committee is that there are two candidates that are thinking of running, both of whom live in this district, and they want to run in District 6. What's up?
I'm going to go home and ask him. You know, the thing is that this is a very liberal county. What do you want to say? It is, and I think.
Yeah, but this district goes all the way through Carroll County and hits the Pennsylvania line, so it's not just Montgomery County.
It goes to up to parts of Potomac.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chris Van Hollen is my congressman.
Right.
Yep.
So
he's mine too, and you know,
And
whenever I called him for something, nobody ever called me back. So.
Well, they heard your last name, but the fact is, there should be some candidates. Now, by the way, do all other Democrats live in this district?
Yes, they do. They all live in the district. Isn't that a shame?
Well, so it's remarkable since Mr. Delaney doesn't live in his district. Doesn't live in his district.
He lives across the street from it. He can see into the 8th.
Okay.
Look, we have, I think, at least 3 good candidates in this race who can all make a good case, and we'll see how this plays out. But each of them has shown some courage and some leadership in different ways. You know, Kumar Barve has taken some really strong stands on transportation issues over the years. Jamie Raskin's been very principled and gotten a lot done. Right. And you've got Kathleen Matthews. So I think those 3 are going to give I think any of those 3 would handily defeat any Republican who does run in this race. And maybe that's why they're not thinking of running in this race. They see some real strength in that field.
It seems a little crazy to me to talk about workforce development, coming out of international development myself, in a district with the education level.
Robin, I've been involved with workforce development in this county for over 12 years, and the thing is that the county executive is talking about this, that 22% of Montgomery high school graduates don't go to college. And so there is a lot of workforce development to be done in this county.
Well, look, we're going to get sidetracked on this issue. I want to go on to the next one because the day after the Sierra Club candidate forum, the Greater Capital Area Association of Realtors also conducted a candidate forum without quite as much sizzle as the night before. Maybe they were just tired. And at the GCAR forum, much of the question and answers were about our favorite topic, Metro Rail, and how to fix it, which also corresponds with an article written by Petula Dvorak in the Washington Post advocating a federal takeover of the rail system. Rich, is a federal takeover of the system the right answer?
Well, we need something, and actually it's not a takeover that's being talked about, but oversight and kind of safety inspections and those kind of things. But yeah, moving this over to the Railroad Administration instead of the Federal Transit Administration is actually a really good move. I think the penalties and the oversight are much stiffer if it's treated as a commuter rail system. Under the regulatory framework, there's a lot more teeth in the federal oversight. And frankly, I don't think anyone's impressed with Metro's performance over the last several years in particular. As a regular rider on the Red Line, I got to say, they got to do better.
Look, the most shocking thing that happened with this most recent derailment was the fact that the inspectors went out, found that the rails were loose, put up a black flag, the most serious of all inspection flaws, and nobody did anything.
There is no excuse for that kind of lapse. There is no excuse for the delays in dealing with some of the communication issues that actually turned deadly in that smoke incident, the mismanagement of incident response, the fact that there wasn't even a driver on the train that they had to back up and it cost a woman her life. I mean, these are things that should not be swept under the carpet and ignored. There needs to be major reform and some real strong management coming in there and changing the culture.
Some different ideas. Robin, you've been a longtime critic of the metro system. The problem is there is no accountability within the system whatsoever. Wouldn't it be better to privatize the system than to turn it over to the feds?
You know, I don't think either solution works. First of all, anybody who looks at the security that was taken over by the feds at airports knows that the federal government frequently doesn't do all that great a job at a lot of things. And it's less accountable because it's so far away. On the other hand, do I think it should be taken over, privatized? No, I don't. I think that we have to start thinking about paying for what we have. We are like children who get toys, break them, and want new ones. We have to start saying, we're not going to get any new toys, no new entrances for subways. We need to fix and put money aside every year to fix what we have.
But Robin, the biggest drain on the budget is personnel. It's personnel. It's not. There's lots of money going into these unions that are part of WMATA, and there's nobody who has accountability. You can't fire anybody. You can't fire a conductor.
That's not true. People have been fired. And
Who?
No, when
what century?
No.
Was it the 20th century?
Casey, let me finish. The young man who erased that check, he was fired almost instantaneously. And some other people have gone by the wayside. But what's interesting is I just heard today that they have got 4 people they're interviewing to be the head of WMATA, and a decision is supposed to be made.
It's a disaster. You can't have 3 governments running this type of an agency. Well, you need to have some privatization and some strong leadership in force here and at play.
The thing is, you can go after the unions without necessarily privatizing things and everything that goes along with that. Anybody who's watched them try to fix an escalator knows that it's absolutely the most ridiculous system anybody's ever seen. They take the escalator out of service for 6 months and let it sit there.
All right, we got to wrap it up. Metro's not going away, so we're going to have lots to talk about in the future. When we come back from this short break, would Maryland's gun laws, as tough as they are, have prevented the shooting in Oregon? Stay tuned.
Lose the war in Vietnam. We quit. And it just made it so much harder for all those guys that were wounded and killed.
Me being a lieutenant, I had the responsibility of helping these guys get home.
I have always credited the military to learn more, to get more education.
You look and you see the guys beside you and around you. We realize you're all Americans, and no longer are you a particular race, you're a soldier.
I served as an Army nurse at the 95th Evacuation Hospital. I saw a lot of death and devastation.
All the neighbors were in my front yard. Welcome home, Stephen. All I wanted to do was go into the basement and hide.
When I was shot down, I became the first resident of the Hanoi Hilton. Our motto was that we're going to come out of there, but we're going to come out of there with our honor.
On Saturday, October 24th, join Bob Schieffer and Ike Liggett at the universities at Shady Grove as we honor our more than 13,000 Montgomery County veterans who served in the Vietnam War.
And welcome back. On Wednesday, the eve before the 2nd anniversary of the sweeping Maryland gun control law that went into effect, Maryland Congressman Chris Van Hollen spoke in favor of taking the Maryland handgun law that outlawed assault weapons, limited ammunition magazines to 10 rounds, and tightened handgun licensing, and make it the law of the land. Sadly, the next day, the country was once again confronted by a lone gunman engaged in a shooting rampage at a community college that killed 10 and wounded at least 7 others. Susan, could the Maryland law have prevented the killings in Oregon?
We don't know all the details yet about what happened in Oregon, but limiting the amount of ammo that you could purchase certainly could have made a difference, because they found great quantities of ammunition on himself at home in the car. Limiting purchases could make a difference. Yet again, we have to look at background checks. And Americans want uniform background checks, and it could have made a difference here. The family, he and his family, have purchased 7 guns in the last 3 years. Plus, he had 6 other guns. They aren't saying where they came from.
The latest reports is they were all legally purchased.
7 of the 13.
No, the latest reports are that all 13.
But they don't know where they came from. 7 came from he or family members. But people don't need that. The really startling fact is, right now, there is more than 1 handgun out there for every single American. I myself don't have any. So I'm worried about who has the one that, I should have. It's crazy. Guns are crazy. And yet again, it appears this man was mentally ill.
Susan, the sweeping statement that guns are crazy ignores the reality
of
most of the country who live in rural areas that are not urban, and they don't have police protection immediately available to them.
I came up in rural America. I spent 2 weeks in rural America. Yes, my family goes hunting, and they have guns, and they use it to shoot animals to feed themselves. They do not, across the board, say, oh, I need a gun to protect myself. That is a hoax.
You guys are both missing the point, because the issue is not whether we're going to ban guns for self-defense or any other purpose, because that's simply not going to happen, and there's no reason to. As Susan said, I grew up in a rural area too, where almost everyone enjoyed hunting, shooting, target shooting, all the other shooting sports. And that's not the issue. That's a distraction. And no one's even trying to ban guns in a serious way in this country. What we're trying to do, and I think what people in even the most rural states in this country would support, is uniform background checks, licensing systems like what Maryland has, limits on the most deadly weapons like we have for machine guns. Why not, some of these military-style assault weapons? Why not the large-capacity ammunition magazines? These things have huge public support in rural areas and urban.
And internet sales
and universal background checks should be a no-brainer. Would Maryland's law have prevented this? We really don't know enough about this case to know, but certainly high-capacity ammunition magazines were part of this shooting, and we don't know what kind of mental history this troubled person had. He may have come up in a background check if we actually done them where he'd purchased the guns. We have to find out a lot more, but the bottom line is we have way too much of this happening, and we've got to do something about it and stop just making stupid excuses.
They have a gun. It's happening because these people
how
are
many
mass
deranged. Knifings have there been in America that resulted in multiple deaths?
I mean, if you don't ban the gun, and you
I'm not saying banning the gun,
but I mean that's the point. If you say don't ban the gun, if I can buy a pistol with 10 rounds in the magazine, I can still
But you should have a background check, and you should be.
Susan,
no, let me answer. Yes, you should have.
I agree with you about the background check.
Let me answer. It's the person. You should have a background check to make sure that they're actually someone who's not a prohibited purchaser or someone with a mental record. And when it comes to the gun, if you think back to the days when most officers carried a 6-shot revolver, the old Saturday Night Specials had 6 rounds. Most states that even allow semi-automatics to be used as hunting rifles limit the number of ammunition magazine capacity to 3 rounds or 5 at the very most. Why did we start thinking it's acceptable to sell handguns over the counter with 19 rounds in the magazine?
I'm not arguing
it's high-capacity magazines specifically that make mass shootings popular. If you're only shooting 6 rounds, it's very easy to overpower a gunman when he stops to reload. When you've got 19 rounds or 17 rounds or 30 rounds in a banana clip on your AK, Casey,
on him. You say it's easy to overcome somebody.
It's easier. You have a shot. The carnage would be lessened. The carnage would be lessened if we weren't so insane.
I want to go to Robin on this. Robin, you've been shouted down by the rest of us. What is your opinion on this? Do we see any hope for changing gun laws?
Actually, I agree with Rich. And I think it's one of those topics which unfortunately people have become so polarized about that they're no longer thinking about common sense. The minute somebody says something reasonable, which to me is a background check, or let's not have guns that shoot more than 20 rounds at the time. To me, that's reasonable. But it seems like a lot of topics in this country have gotten to the point where people no longer really listen to each other. It sort of kicks off the minute they hear one thing. One side is saying, we should ban
So
guns.
was the president guilty of that because he came out last night before they knew anything about the shooter and demanded changes in gun laws?
I think the president was doing what politicians do, which was.
But doesn't
which
that
was
exacerbate?
taking-
Doesn't that
I think it's wrong
exacerbate
to
it?
blame him, Casey, when it's the apologists for the gun industry that are usually first out of the block saying this just shows you need to put a gun in
And
every
the
hand.
other
But I
thing-
have to say, I don't think it's
both sides
it's
are
too
wrong, I
great
think, in that.
to take advantage of this kind of situation at the beginning. The first thing you should be saying is expressing sympathy for the
And he
people
did.
who were
All
killed.
right, well,
which
I
he
want to wrap.
did do,
I want to
but
wrap
I
this up.
wanna
I
say-
want you to know,
political side of
Susan.
it comes
I want to
later.
wrap this up, and I'm going to ask all of you. The sheriff deliberately did not reveal the name of the perpetrator because he didn't want to publicize or give this person any infamy. Was that the right decision?
Good for him.
I agree. 100%.
Susan.
I don't think their names should ever be used. This was the 294th mass shooting in the country this year on the 274th day. A mass shooting is 4 people or more.
How many of those occurred in Chicago?
They are occurring across the country, and every time this happens, the other side, who doesn't believe in any sort of gun control at all, says, now is not the time to talk about it. We should put our heads down and pray for the victims. Well, at the rate we're going more than one a day, we're never going to be able to talk logically
Murders
about...
are up in the District of Columbia by
Not-
44 people.
We're
this
talking
year.
mass shootings.
And
Mass
where do all
shootings.
those crime guns come from?
I don't
Virginia.
know.
Okay, that's the
no
answer.
gun rules in Virginia.
How do you know they all
On
come
the-
from
They
Virginia?
do.
In the East
I love
Coast,
it.
they do.
You can see how polarized we are on this very panel. When we come back from this short break with parting shots. And now with parting shots, Robin Uncapher has had a word in edgewise tonight.
Which is so unusual. Actually, my shout out tonight is to our good friend Jim Shalek, who comes from this panel, and he is now the chairman of the Board of Elections. He has been under attack, to me, the most ridiculous possible attack, which is that the Republicans, the evil Republicans, have been trying to change the early voting sites from Chevy Chase to Potomac. So I'm sorry that people are going to have to get in their Porsches and drive a little further to the other voting site, but I do support Jim. He has more integrity than most people I've ever met.
Susan Heltemes, your parting shot.
It is back to school time, and every year I rant about this, and that is when a bus stops with flashing red lights and the arm is out, you stop both directions and let those little children get off the bus. Well, last year, thousands of people broke the law, and they now have cameras on buses. If you get one of those tickets, I believe it's $150 or $175. But if a cop stops you, $750 fine and 3 points on your driver's license. Think of the children, save lives, stop when you see a bus with flashing red lights and the stop arm out.
Thank you, Susan. Rich Parsons, your parting shot.
Well, the county recently spun off a new economic development agency to really start working on getting and keeping more jobs here. And there's a great economic development opportunity I'd like to see this county really pursue, and that's to get an arena in Montgomery County that holds more than 2,000 people. We have no place right now in this entire county to hold a major concert, a major sporting event, or even a high school graduation within the county's own borders. Enough already. There's been talk recently in the Shady Grove area, an area with lots of transportation infrastructure, the ICC, 270, the Quarter Cities Transitway, the Red Line, all serve that area of the county. It's a great location that's central. Everyone in the county could get there from about 20 minutes. Let's put an arena in Montgomery County. I'm tired of schlepping to DAR every time one of my kids graduates, and let's make some of the money that we're giving away to other jurisdictions around us by having this big, huge hole in our economic development picture.
Well, thank you, Rich. I want to thank Robin for pointing out a very important topic. We're going to be off next week because of the Columbus Day holiday, but when we come back, we are going to talk about this topic, about the evil Maryland Republicans trying to disenfranchise minority voters by closing down selected early voting sites. And as a matter of fact, it came up during the political debate at GCAR this past week. One of the candidates said Republicans were certainly trying to do that. So if you want to find out more about this topic, you can tune in 2 weeks. Now, it's also hurricane time, and as you can see, I'm wearing the perfect hurricane tie. I've got my mermaid tie on because there's a deluge out there right now, and we're all going to be swimming in the water that is going to flood our neighborhoods. I want to thank the panel for being here. I want to thank the audience for tuning in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show. For 21 This Week, I'm Casey Aiken.